Disabled people, what's something you do on purpose to mess with people? Story 1. Yay, I finally get to tell this story. Not really something I've done multiple times, but it still fits here. I have cerebral palsy, which most noticeably affects lower limb function as well as upper limb function, in a less visible manner. I can still walk short distances with crutches or a walker, but do I need to be pushed in a wheelchair for anything longer than 25 meters? In any case, a friend and I had been hanging around downtown with me in a wheelchair, having my crutches with me out of habit. When we were just about home, I asked if he minded letting me walk for a bit, so I got out and toddled on with my crutches. Not having anything better to do with the wheelchair, my friend decides to get in and try some wheelies or whatever, generally just messing around. I don't mind if we go. For whatever reason, we decide to cross the street. I struggle for a bit but manage. Eventually, my able-bodied friend, however, did not. In trying to get off the sidewalk, he keels over, presumably spectacularly, as my back was turned and I didn't get to see this part, but he landed a meter away from the wheelchair. Some people who had just come around the corner, however, did see the whole thing and rushed towards him to help. They had almost reached my friend when he simply but swiftly got up on his feet and started pushing what those people presumed was his own wheelchair, making his way towards me as nonchalantly as he could muster. Needless to say, that was not something you'd expect to happen, and this surprise was plain to see on their faces. I still remember the look as I could barely hold in my laughter. He should have started screaming how it was a miracle just to really mess with those people. Story 2. Favorite story about my SOB uncle. He lost his leg above his knee years and years ago. Nowadays, the prosthetics are a bit more comfortable and can use suction to stay in place. Long time ago though, he'd have to wear a special belt and buckle his prosthetic to it. It was really uncomfortable. If he knew he was going to be sitting for a while, he'd unbuckle his leg to relieve some of the pressure. He'd usually sit on the outside of the table/booth when going out to stretch it out a bit. He and my aunt were eating dinner at a diner in their small town, and there was an unruly small child running around. He was running around, getting into things he shouldn't, etc. And nobody did anything because small town diner. My uncle was getting irritated. So from his spot on the outside of the booth, he stretches his leg a little further than normal, and sure enough, the kid takes the bait. He comes over and kicks my uncle's leg, which flops like 90 degrees to the side. Amid my uncle's fake screams of pain, kid didn't bother anyone else that night. A little part of me was hoping the leg hurt the kid after kicking him, but making him think he broke your leg definitely was a good punishment too. Shame on those parents letting him run around kicking people and such though. Story 3. Oh man, my go-to story for this is the first week of Infinity Wars in theaters. So I have cystic fibrosis. Long story short, ended up with a port in my chest. It's a device used to deliver medicine, and it leaves a pretty sizable bump there. Okay, so, throughout the movie, these two absolute jackholes just kept blabbing, won't shut up after multiple times asking. Probably should have gotten the concierge to kick them out now that I think about it, but hindsight is 20/20. So after the movie ends and everyone is walking out, I walked up behind them and coughed really loud on them. They turned to me, I apologized and said, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Make sure you go sanitize right away." I pulled my shirt down, revealing the bump. Technically, I shouldn't even be out of the hospital. They still don't know what this is. Brushed past them and left, so I have no idea how they reacted. But I like to think I gave them a scare. People who just talk during movies irritates me to no end. Especially when it's such a big event like Infinity Wars was. Why even go if you're not going to enjoy the movie? Story 4. I had a serious motorcycle injury on my back a while ago. I was at the hospital starting to recover, but still in a lot of pain. And since I couldn't really walk more than a couple meters, I was moved around in a wheelchair. Here I am waiting for a radio/MRI checkup. In a waiting room full of people, and I feel a need to take a dump. Fearing having to hold it in mid-procedure, since there was a huge line, I decided to act. There was a toilet next to the waiting room, but it's not disabled or large. So I shockingly stood up from the wheelchair, yelled, "It's a miracle! It worked! I can walk again!" and limped to the toilet. Got a few weird looks and a couple smiles, and I went on to try to take a dump. By the way, I turned out unable to push it out because of the pain. Overall, 4 out of 10 would not do again. I wonder if anyone really believed you. I'd like to imagine someone went home telling their whole family what they just saw. Story 25. I am 26 years old with severe rheumatoid arthritis. I don't like messing with people because most of the time there's no reason to. People seem to be very unsure or unsettled by disability, especially in the young, so taking the pee out of it is just mean-spirited. It's kind of like putting a bug on the shoulder of someone who is scared of insects. I joke about my condition a lot. There's been a couple times when I've overheard a kid in public not eating their vegetables or something else innocuous like that, and I've considered walking over to them with my uncanny valley body and saying, "If you don't eat your broccoli, you'll grow up to look like me," and limp away. But that's freaking horrible, so I don't. Horrible? Yes, but it could be so funny too. Maybe I'm just a bad person. Story 6. I'm hard of hearing and have to wear 2 hearing aids. If someone makes a racist or sexist or homophobic remark, I usually just say, "Sorry, I have hearing aids, can you repeat that?" Followed by, "What? What?" Hoping that make them repeat the words out loud multiple times. and get increasingly uncomfortable about doing so will make them realize how much of a wiener they sound. This usually isn't to mess with people, but the perks of being almost deaf is that when you don't want to listen to someone, I just unhook my hearing aids until they finish and then discreetly put them back in. If only some people had a mute button, the world would be a much better place. Story 7. I have what they call an invisible disability. It's not visually obvious right away. I've had a lot of surgeries to correct various things wrong with my body though, and I sometimes worry what people will say when I'm at the beach or the pool. Usually some little kid will ask me or point me out to their parents, and I try to come up with an excellent reason for the scars. A bear attack, a shark attack, a llama attack. That got some laughs. Fighting off 27 knife-wielding criminals, etc. Never worry about what other people might think about you. Especially kids. Kids are just curious and don't know any better. And from my experience, more times than not, the kids genuinely think the scars and all are cool and want to know more. Story 8. Not necessarily something done on purpose per se, but it still seems to throw people somewhat. I use a wheelchair but do have crutches for small distances, so I always have my crutches with me too. This always seems to really confuse people for some reason. Also, I'm very pierced and tattooed, usually with very brightly colored hair. This is something else that can take people by surprise. I even had one person say to me, "Wow, I didn't think you could get tattooed in a wheelchair." I think I gave a bit of a sarcastic comment along the lines of, "Yeah, the tattoo guns are usually repelled by the wheels, but I got a special edition to prevent that." I really want to take a deep dive into that person's brain. What would make them think people in a wheelchair can't get tattoos? Story 9. My mom was shot in the eye with a BB as a little girl. As a result, her iris is large and has wavy edges like a lake. When I would bring a new boy home to meet the fam, she would wait until I left the room and then nuke her target. How? She'd go up to the boy, lean her face towards him and ask, "Is there anything wrong with my eyes? I fell and hit my head a few minutes ago and I'm feeling pretty funny in the head." I'd usually be back from the bathroom by the time the stammering from the gentleman ensued. Unsure how to break it to his girlfriend's mom that she'd done freaked up her head real bad. Your mom honestly sounds like such a fun person. And her eyes sound so cool to be honest. Can you bring me to meet your family just so I can see? Story 10. I have a hearing disability and I'm a middle school teacher. A lot of my students don't understand that hearing disability does not mean the same thing as zero sound 100% completely stone deaf. That means that occasionally students will talk in my classroom about things they wouldn't tell a teacher. Then I can quietly take action on the things I hear when it's needed. How did the assistant principal find out who took that embarrassing video of one girl and started passing it around the school? Why did the bully's schedule get changed so she's no longer in the same class as her victim? Magic. That's how, kids. Magic. That's some real superhero energy coming from you. Using your powers for good and helping students out like that. Story 11. When people ask me how I lost my leg, there are a couple things I will do. One is to act confused. Look to my leg and freak out as if I didn't know I was an amputee screaming, "Oh my god! Oh my freaking god, my leg! Where's my leg?" Or I make up some totally BS story, such as landmine, shark attack, bone-eating parasite, etc. And if they say I'm making it up, I get very sad and look them in the eye and simply say, "How dare you?" After messing with folks, however, I always tell the truth of how I lost it afterwards, unless they were honestly really rude or genuinely terrible people. Those two things are the only proper thing to do if you're missing a leg. Why not get some fun out of it? Story 12. My friend's father lost his leg just below the hip in a motorcycle accident, and always wears a prosthetic. If you didn't know better, you'd think he just has a limp. Occasionally during Halloween, he'll participate in the neighborhood haunted house. There was one year that he stuffed ground beef between his stump and the prosthetic, and then he shackled the prosthetic to the wall. When some kids wandered into his room of the haunted house, he chopped through the ground beef with an axe and hopped towards them on one leg. They wet themselves. That's so mean. Please tell me there's video proof of this. I need to see it. Story 13. I'm hard of hearing, deaf through my left ear, and whenever I meet new people or when I'm new somewhere like school, I don't immediately inform people about my hearing. Then when they start talking to me or ask me questions and I don't hear them, they often get upset or mad and say, "What are you, deaf?" And then I answer, "Yes." You should see their faces once they realize I'm not joking. Oh, they must feel terrible afterwards. Which is good. Story 14. In the town of Pushkar, India, there's a tea shop off the street coming from the train station. When young tourists walk by with their backpacks, the tea seller comes lurching out of the shadows like freaking Quasimodo growling, "Chai, chai, chai," with one eye screwed up, terrifying them. If you go into his shop though, suddenly he's acting normal. He has a deformity in one leg that gives him a limp, which he massively exaggerated for effect. Once you're in on the joke, it's fun to drink tea there and wait/hope for him to scare more backpackers. I'm personally not a fan of tea, but if someone came up to me like that, I might be. That presentation deserves a taste. Story 15. Not me, but a friend. He and I both had the same type of cancer, but his was in the lower leg and mine was in the upper, so he has a detachable prosthetic. He's constantly removing it just for the reactions of people. One day he was telling me this story. He was at home and for the longest time he was so used to just hopping on one leg, He took off his leg and he lost it. Couldn't find it anywhere, so he was just walking around with no leg for a while. I'm so forgetful with most stuff. That would be me within seconds of taking it off. Story 16. I used to take my prosthetic leg off, turn it around, and wear it backwards in school to get out of lessons with a substitute teacher. They'd always look horrified when I said that I'd sprain my ankle though. The teachers caught on pretty quickly once they mentioned it to other staff members though, lol. I can't even imagine their faces when seeing your leg like that. Oh, that's brilliant. Story 17. I'm a wheelchair user, but not a paraplegic. I also have restless leg syndrome, unrelated. People mention my leg moving in relation to my wheelchair a lot. Like, you can move your leg, so obviously you can walk. I put away my glasses, stand up, take a few steps, and fall hard. Man's out here taking body shots just to prove a point. That's dedication, I'll admit. Story 18. So I went blind a few years ago, and I am a huge Star Wars fan. So whenever me and a certain friend are around people who've never met me, I'll do the how many fingers thing. Then hold up 4, then 2, then 1 finger, and I'll call them out quickly. I've heard a very loud what the frickin' reaction to this. I would imagine that honestly would have gotten a reaction like that out of me too on the right day. Story 19. I have hypermobility, so I can dislocate some of my joints fairly easily. And my ex-girlfriend, not ex at the time, was playing with my hand while watching a movie. So I dislocated my finger when she pulled on it and freaked her out. It was hilarious. Is this the reason she's an ex now? Story 20. My friend was born without legs, so every Halloween she dresses up as the girl from The Ring and runs through the street as a maniac whilst half her body is in an old TV that's on wheels. It's great. People who just moved here are always the funniest people to scare. Story 21. When people, not employees, just random people, ask if my service dog, wearing her clearly labeled vest with multiple patches stating service dog, is actually a service dog, I tell them that she's actually a service tiger. Be careful, if they're dumb enough to ask a question like that, they're definitely dumb enough to believe you. Story 22. One of my mom's best friends has one arm and uses a prosthetic arm. She likes to unlatch it at bars and then shake hands with men and then they pull off her arm. My mom and her friends greatly enjoy this prank. If a girl did that to me, I think I'd instantly fall for her. Story 23. I'm pretty much legally blind in one eye and vision is going in the other. My glasses help a bit, but not much. I always have people ask me how many fingers I'm holding up and always say, I don't know, 23? Because I'm just tired of hearing people ask. It's the how's the weather up there to tall guys, but for the visually impaired. Story 24. A paraplegic friend of mine always makes purposely awkward handicap jokes. It would work better if he didn't do it in a Discord chat with new people, but the reactions he gets are pretty funny anyway. What are you talking about? Discord chats with new people are the perfect place for that. Story 25. Not really disabled, but if you have glasses, you know this one. Hey, take off your glasses and tell me how many fingers I hold up. I always respond with 15. Story 26. I had a blind guy come into the movie theater and ask for the closed caption glasses. I got them out and handed them to him before I realized he was messing with me. Oh, I just know that made his day. He finally got one. Story 27. I have a friend whose mom has a plate in her head from a tumor she had when my friend was young. She used to sneeze at parties and drop a handful of tiny screws. Story 28. My boyfriend unclips his leg and has it fall if someone who is visibly more capable asks him to stand. The only proper response. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more videos to come or else this spider will be in your bed tonight.